example, we know that in Hadith literature there are Hadiths which tell us that the Quran that we have is incomplete. The Rajam verse is a very typical example. It is called Mansukhu Tilawa Dunul Hukum, which means that it is there.
Yeah.
Just the recital has been abrogated. Then we have the suckling verse, which the mother of faithful Aishah said that the Prophet had just died, and they still read that verse in the Quran, and we know that it's no longer in the Quran.
Islam has some incredibly odd teachings, and I'm putting that mildly. But every once in a while, we come across a command that's so unbelievably absurd on so many levels. We can only wonder why Muhammad wasn't laughed out of Arabia when he delivered it to his followers. Take, for instance, Muhammad's solution to the following problem. Suppose a man and a woman, who aren't married to each other, need to be alone together for some reason. Perhaps the man is a household servant and the woman's husband goes away on business trips. How are the man and the woman, who aren't married to each other, supposed to avoid having sex? This problem was actually brought to Muhammad, and Allah himself provided the solution. Allah, in his timeless wisdom, revealed in the Quran that in order to prevent any sort of illicit sexual encounter, the woman should breastfeed the grown man 10 times. This will technically make the woman the man's foster mother, so they won't be tempted to have sex. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, 10 breastfeedings, that's too much, don't worry, Allah has got you covered. Even though the Quran is supposedly Allah's eternal word, Allah eventually changed his eternal mind about the need for 10 breastfeedings. 5, it turns out, is quite sufficient. Sahih Muslim, 3598. It was narrated from Amrah that she heard Aishah say, when she was mentioning what kind of breastfeeding makes a person a Maḥram. A Maḥram is a relative you're not allowed to marry or have sex with. 10 definite breastfeedings were revealed in the Quran, then 5 definite breastfeedings were revealed too. Notice that Aishah says these verses were revealed in the Quran. Let's read another. Sahih Muslim, 3597. It was narrated that Aishah said, among the things that were revealed of the Quran was that 10 definite breastfeedings make a person a Maḥram. Then that was abrogated and replaced with 5 definite breastfeedings, and the Messenger of Allah passed away when this was among the things that were recited of the Quran. So Allah revealed 2 Quran verses about breastfeeding adults. One verse requiring 10 breastfeedings, which was later abrogated by a second verse requiring 5 breastfeedings. Aishah specifically says that this was among the things that were recited of the Quran when Muhammad died. But you can read the Quran we have today until your brain falls out, and you won't find either of these verses. So what happened to them? Well, Aishah tells us what happened to the first verse in Sunan ibn Majah, 1944. It was narrated that Aishah said, the verse of stoning and of breastfeeding an adult 10 times was revealed, and the paper was with me under my pillow. When the Messenger of Allah died, we were preoccupied with his death, and a tame sheep came in and ate it. The 7th century version of the dog ate my homework was apparently a sheep ate my Quran verses. That explains the disappearance of the verse requiring 10 breastfeedings, but the other verse commanding 5 breastfeedings isn't in the Quran either. So we can only conclude that both verses on breastfeeding adults were eaten by Aishah's sheep. Now, was this a mere accident, or was there something more sinister afoot? Let's see if we can solve the mystery of the missing verses. The case begins with a woman named Sahla. Sahih Muslim, 3600. It was narrated that Aishah said, Sahla bint Suhail came to the Prophet and said, O Messenger of Allah, I see signs of displeasure on the face of Abu Hudhaifa, that was her husband, when Salim, who was his ally, comes in. The Prophet said, breastfeed him. She said, how can I breastfeed him? He is a grown man. The Messenger of Allah smiled and said, I know that he is a grown man. Creepiest smile ever. So Sahla's husband was concerned about this grown man being around his wife, and Muhammad's response was that she needed to put her breasts in the man's mouth repeatedly. Interestingly, Sahla did exactly what Muhammad and Allah commanded. She put her breasts in Salim's mouth so that he could suck on them over and over again. And this calmed her husband down. Why? Because he trusted Muhammad. Well, Muhammad and Allah say that if I just let this man suck on my wife's breast a bunch of times, I don't need to worry about what they do when I'm gone for the weekend. I feel so much better now that her nipples are in this guy's mouth. Anyone else want to hang out with my wife while I'm out of town? Come on over. Breasts for everyone, Allahu Akbar. For a while at least, Muhammad's wives were on board with Allah's views on breastfeeding adults. When Muhammad's wife Hafsa wanted to spend time with a man, she would send the man to her sister to be breastfed. We read in Malik's Muwatta, chapter 30, section 1, number 8. Hafsa, al-Mu'mineen, mother of the believers, sent Asim ibn Abdullah ibn Sa'd to her sister Fatima bint Umar ibn al-Khattab for her to suckle him 10 times so that he could come in to see her. She did it so he used to come in to see her. Hafsa couldn't breastfeed Asim because she didn't have children, so she had her sister breastfeed him 10 times, which transformed him into Hafsa's foster nephew. Eventually, however, most of Muhammad's wives, including Hafsa, became disgruntled over the practice. After retelling the story about Muhammad ordering Abu Hudhaifa's wife to breastfeed a grown man, Malik's Muwatta, chapter 30, section 2, number 12, continues with this. Aishah, al-Mu'mineen, mother of the believers, took that as a precedent for whatever men she wanted to be able to come to see her. She ordered her sister, Kulthum bint Abi Bakr as-Siddiq, and the daughters of her brother to give milk to whichever men she wanted to be able to come in to see her. The rest of the wives of the Prophet refused to let anyone come into them by such nursing. They said, "No, by Allah, we think that what the Messenger of Allah ordered Sahla bint Suhail to do was only by an indulgence concerning the nursing of Salim alone. No, by Allah, no one will come in upon us by such nursing." We find the same thing in Sahih Muslim 3605, where Muhammad's wife Salama declares, "The other wives of the Prophet used to refuse to admit anyone on the basis of that breastfeeding of a grown-up. They said to Aishah, 'By Allah, we think that this is a concession which the Messenger of Allah granted only in the case of Salim. No one will enter upon us or see us on the basis of this type of breastfeeding.'" So Muhammad's wives were claiming that the command to breastfeed adults only applied to Abu Hudhaifa's wife in the case of Salim. This explanation obviously doesn't work for 3 reasons. 1, there were 2 Qur'an verses about breastfeeding adults. Whichever verse was meant for Abu Hudhaifa's wife, what was the other verse for? 2, we know that Abu Hudhaifa's wife was told to breastfeed Salim 5 times. So the situation with Abu Hudhaifa arose after the verse requiring 10 breastfeedings had been abrogated. The verse requiring 10 breastfeedings therefore couldn't have been revealed about Abu Hudhaifa's wife. 3, as we've seen, Muhammad's wife Hafsa had her sister breastfeed a man 10 times, which means that this was already being practiced before Abu Hudhaifa became concerned about his wife and Salim. So there's no way the commands to breastfeed adults only applied in one specific case, and Muhammad's wives knew this. And yet they used their glaringly false interpretation to reject the practice. Apparently Muhammad's wives had more common sense than their husband and their God. They realized how silly it was for grown women to put their bare breasts into the mouths of grown men in an attempt to avoid sexual tension. They understood that it was absolutely ludicrous for Aishah to keep sending men to suck on her sister's and niece's breasts whenever she wanted to be alone with the men. And surprise, surprise, the verses commanding this practice, a practice Muhammad's wives found revolting, came up missing after he died. Someone conveniently left the sheep gate open. There are only 2 real possibilities here. Either Aishah remained faithful in her desire to preserve the Qur'an, and Muhammad's other wives conspired to send hungry sheep into Aishah's house to rid the world of one of history's most ridiculous teachings. Or, since Aishah had the only written copy of the verses, Muhammad's other wives may have eventually persuaded her to destroy them. I favor the latter explanation. While it's clear that Aishah initially approved of Allah's command to breastfeed adults, she was also very young and under the influence of Muhammad. When Muhammad died, Aishah was 18 years old, and by this time she had presumably learned that if a woman wants to avoid sexual tension, it's a good idea to keep her breasts out of men's mouths. But there's another piece of evidence that supports Aishah's involvement in the sheepgate conspiracy. The sheep didn't just eat the Quran verses on breastfeeding adults. It also ate the Quran verse on stoning adulteresses. Aishah was once accused of adultery, and if Muhammad hadn't received a special revelation proclaiming her innocence, she could have been stoned to death. The accusation of adultery was one of the reasons she became so careful about having her sister and nieces help her follow the breastfeeding rule. She was trying to protect herself. We don't need Sherlock Holmes to uncover Aishah's fear of the verse of stoning. And her sheep ate the only copy. Coincidence? No. Conspiracy. The verses on breastfeeding an adult, along with the verse of stoning, fell victim to one of history's least common means of malice: death by sheep. For you Muslims who are watching, here are 10 takeaways. First, Muhammad's wives knew more about human nature than Allah did. So Muhammad's wives were greater in knowledge than Allah. Second, in the Qur'an, Surah 15, verse 9, Allah promises to protect the Qur'an from corruption. And yet Muhammad's wives were able to destroy verses of the Qur'an. So Muhammad's wives were greater in power than Allah. So was the sheep. Your God couldn't protect the Qur'an from a sheep. Third, Muhammad's wives had the courage to remove this awful teaching from the Qur'an. So they were greater in goodness than Allah. Question: if Muhammad's wives were greater in knowledge, power, and goodness than Allah, why are you worshiping Allah? Fourth, if Muhammad's wives were willing to deliberately destroy verses of the Qur'an, it seems that they may have recognized that they were married to a false prophet. Unfortunately for them, since the penalty for leaving Islam is death, they had to keep quiet about their apostasy. Fifth, many Muslims today don't believe in the doctrine of abrogation, the doctrine that some Qur'an verses abrogate or cancel other Qur'an verses. And yet your most trusted sources are filled with examples of Qur'an verses abrogating other Qur'an verses. Why do modern Muslim beliefs so frequently contradict orthodox Islamic doctrine? Sixth, you believe that the Qur'an is an eternal tablet in heaven. But notice that this eternal tablet is incoherent. One verse of the eternal Qur'an says that 10 breastfeedings are required to make a man a Maḥram. Another verse of the eternal Qur'an says that 5 breastfeedings are required to make a man a Maḥram. The Qur'an is eternally incoherent. Seventh, the Qur'an you read today is different from the eternal Qur'an. Which one's better? Eighth, your Muslim leaders tell you that the Qur'an has been perfectly preserved, even though they've read the same sources I keep quoting to you. Your leaders know that, according to your most trusted sources, entire chapters of the Qur'an were lost. Large passages of the Qur'an were lost. Verses were lost. Phrases were lost. And yet they tell you that the Qur'an has been perfectly preserved right down to the letter from the time it was revealed to Muhammad. They tell you this because it gives you confidence in the Qur'an. But your confidence is based on deception. Ninth, if your leaders keep lying to you about the history of the Qur'an, what else are they lying to you about? 10th, if your leaders are the ones who are lying to you, and I'm the one who's telling you the truth, why do you get mad at me?
If you look just at the Qur'an, you will get the indication that you can have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old. The reason why it's haram to have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old is not found in the Qur'an at all. If you just read the Qur'an, it is halal, it would be halal to have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old. In Surah Al-Talaq, chapter 65, verse 4, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us who you can divorce and who you cannot divorce. And then he says, وَاللَّائِ لَمْ يَحِدْنَ وَاللَّائِ لَمْ يَحِدْنَ, and the ones who had never been pubescent before. And by the way, this is very important, yeah? I want all Muslims to be aware of this. The reason why we don't have sexual intercourse with 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds or whatever is not because of puberty. Wait a minute, what did you say? It's not because of puberty, because that verse in the Qur'an actually says lam yahid. They never had puberty before. You can't go around that. The Qur'an doesn't say anywhere in the Qur'an that the woman has to be pubescent. I dare you to find one verse in the Qur'an where it says you're not allowed to marry someone based on harm, or you're not allowed to have sexual intercourse based on harm, or you're not allowed to marry someone based on puberty. So if you're in the Qur'an alone, you're allowed to have sexual intercourse with 5-year-olds. Get me one verse in the Qur'an which says the woman has to be pubescent. One verse. I want one verse in the Qur'an from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, which says that she has to be pubescent.
I've just said that.
So okay, so that makes it halal from your perspective. From your perspective, it's halal. You know, in the Quran it says, حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ. It says you're not allowed to marry your mum. It says you're not allowed to marry your sister, your auntie. Where does it say you're not allowed to marry a prepubescent? I'm looking for one verse that you can say, you pinpoint it and say, this is where it says prepubescent marriage or whatever is not allowed. So if you're Quran alone, you're steered towards pedophilia, a severe type of pedophilia, a wife abuse, a severe type of wife abuse.
What is the most disgusting verse in the Quran? Surah 65 verse 4 confirms that men can marry little girls who are too young to menstruate even after they have been divorced. With me here in studio to unpack this from Islamic sources and commentaries, our dear brother David Wood. David, the Quran itself actually endorses this.
And this is important because, as we've seen, when we raise the issue of Muhammad and Aishah, Muslims at first will try to say, no, she was much older than 9. And then we show them what their sources say. But then they'll argue that she had reached puberty. And they'll say that in Islam, you have to reach puberty. We show from their sources that Aishah hadn't reached puberty. But notice, it's strange for them to even make the argument that Aishah must have reached puberty, not just because of what's in the hadith, but also what's in the Quran. If it's wrong to have sex with a girl before she's reached puberty, why does the Quran allow men to have sex with girls before they've reached puberty? And so what you have in Surah 65, verse 4 of the Quran is that Allah had already revealed that if a man wants to divorce a woman, he should divorce her, and then the woman should wait 3 monthly menstrual cycles before she gets married to another man, so that there's no confusion if a child is born. But Muhammad's companions eventually raised the issue, well, what about our wives that we're divorcing who don't have a monthly menstrual cycle? What do we do in those cases? And there were basically 3 categories. There were women who were too old to have a monthly menstrual cycle, little girls who haven't reached the age of puberty, so they don't have a monthly menstrual cycle, and pregnant women.
That's right.
So Surah 65 verse 4 is to give a ruling on those situations. Yeah,
exactly.
And we'll go ahead and read the Hilleli Khan translation here. They add a little bit of commentary to show what it means, but it's exactly what we're saying. So Surah 65 verse 4. And those of your women as have passed the age of monthly courses, so these are women who are too old, for them the iddah, that's the waiting period before you can marry again, for them the iddah, prescribed period, if you have doubt about their periods, is 3 months. And then it goes into a different category of wives. And for those who have no courses, i.e. they are still immature, their iddah, prescribed period, is 3 months likewise, except in case of death. So here, Allah gives the ruling that if a girl who is still immature, she doesn't have a monthly menstrual cycle, if you divorce her, then she has to wait 3 months because she doesn't have a monthly menstrual cycle. So you just wait 3 months instead. But notice what this is actually saying. Obviously, you can get married to a girl before she's reached puberty. You can have sex with her and divorce her, and then she has to wait 3 months before she can get married again, but she hasn't reached puberty. And so the next guy can marry her after 3 months, have sex with her, divorce her, all of this before she's ever reached the age of puberty. And so the Quran is actually giving rulings, and it's assumed that you can have sex with a prepubescent girl.
I want to add Tafsir al-Jalalain, by the way, which people can go to altafsir.com.
I actually have those.
Excellent. You can go because that confirms, and it's in English. People can go and read it for themselves. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we're gonna look at that on the screen, because notice there are lots of Muslims who they think Islam is wonderful. These are the same Muslims who, if you tell them Muhammad had sex with a little girl, they'll say no way. Because they're convinced already that he's great and wonderful, and so the idea of him having sex with a 9-year-old girl it doesn't
They can't believe it, right? But it's similar with the Quran. They think of the Quran as this wonderful book that's giving the best rules ever. And if you tell them the Quran actually allows sex with prepubescent girls, they say you're making it up, right? So this verse isn't the clearest verse in the world. You have to understand what questions it's answering and the previous background and what issues this is claiming to respond to. Once you understand all of that, then it is clear what it's saying. But just to show that we're not alone in interpreting it this way, let's go to some of the greatest Islamic commentaries of all time. So this is the tafsir of Ibn Kathir. Ibn Kathir, considered by many to be the greatest Quran commentator of all time. The heading here is the iddah of those in menopause and those who do not have menses. He says, Allah the Exalted clarifies the waiting period of the woman in menopause, and that is the one whose menstruation has stopped due to her older age. Her iddah is 3 months instead of the 3 monthly cycles for those who menstruate, which is based upon the ayat in Surah Al-Baqarah. And then notice, the same for the young who have not reached the years of menstruation. Their iddah is 3 months like those in menopause. So not according to me, not according to Al-Fadi, according to Ibn Kathir, the greatest Quran commentator of all time, this is talking about girls who are so young they have not reached the years of menstruation.
And that's 700 years after allegedly the revelation of this verse. Apparently this practice is still going on and Ibn Kathir has no problem.
No problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
But suppose we don't like Ibn Kathir, let's go. And here we have Tafsir Jalalain, which you were bringing up. So the commentary on Surah 65, verse 4, and as for those of your women who no longer expect to menstruate, so these are grown women, if you have any doubts about their waiting period, their prescribed waiting period shall be 3 months, and also for those who have not yet menstruated because of their young age. So girls who have not menstruated specifically because they're too young. Interestingly, the next commentary, this is Tafsir of Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas gives the historical background of the verse. Notice what he says.
Yeah.
So, and for such of your women as despair of menstruation because of old age, if you doubt about their waiting period, their period of waiting shall be 3 months. Upon which another man asked, O Messenger of Allah, what about the waiting period of those who do not have menstruation because they are too young? Along with those who have it not because of their young age, their waiting period is 3 months. So notice, someone actually raises his hand. Muhammad, what about girls who are too young to have a monthly menstrual cycle? And that would have been a good place for Muhammad to say, what? You can't do that.
Exactly. And Ibn Abbas is the father of Islamic commentaries, and he is the cousin of Muhammad.
And so this is a pretty high authority here. Notice all of the most respected Quran commentators of all time are agreeing on what this means. But just to show that there are Muslims who are honest about this even today, let's look at a modern, very popular Muslim da'i who admits what the Quran is saying. And so this is going to be from Muhammad Hijab. We're going to look at some video clips. And his position is actually that if you just go with the Quran, you'll conclude that you could have sex with a 5-year-old. Because that's all it says, as long as she hasn't reached puberty. But he believes that you have to go outside of the Quran. So I just want to clarify that. He's not saying that it's okay to have sex with 5-year-olds. He's saying if you just had the Quran. He's saying you have to go to the Hadith to find out that you should wait till she's a little bit older. But let's go ahead and check out a clip from our good friend, Muhammad Hijab.
I like his reasoning.
Yeah, notice this is a popular Muslim speaker saying that if you just go with the Quran on this, you would conclude that it allows a severe type of pedophilia. It's
and he acknowledged that it is a pedophilia going by the Quran.
A severe type of pedophilia. So this is why we say this is the most disgusting verse of the Quran, and why Muslims who try to say, oh, Aishah must have reached puberty because Islam would never allow that. Allah himself allows sex with prepubescent girls, not just according to us, according to the Quran, according to the Hadith, according to the greatest Islamic scholars of all time, and even according to Muhammad Hijab when he's being honest. So absolutely reprehensible.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this clip, by the way. And I think it's fair to say that next time we'll revisit this clip and even expand a little bit further on what Muhammad Hijab was saying concerning Quran-only interpretation versus obviously he's going to allude to other sources that you need to rely on. So that's why we share these things with you, and we are sharing it from the horse's mouth in this case, one of their own, a very known apologist in the modern Islamic field of apologetics. And we are quoting also from Islamic sources. We have projected it for you on the screen, given you the sources where you can go and find it. Some of it is even found in English, so it's easy for you, if you don't read Arabic, to be able to read it as well. Thank you, David. Can't wait until next time. Thank you, everyone. This is Al-Fadi. God bless you. Take care. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, Seerah International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.